I want to talk about touchscreens in cars. And I've got to confess that traditionally, historically, as you know, I've been reviewing cars a very long time. Touchscreens were introduced in cars quite some time back, actually. I was a fan of them, I thought they were great. You could select menus, you could go into it, you could do things, etc., etc. But I have to confess that lately, I have been finding them more and more annoying. And there was a couple of cars I reviewed recently where so many of the functions of the car were now entrapped within a big digital screen that it became not just annoying and frustrating, but actually, I thought, a little bit dangerous. So I did a little digging, and I found that there actually is data research to back that up. In fact, using a touchscreen can apparently slow your reaction time down, as a driver, slow your reaction time down by 50%. And that actually reduces your reaction time and makes it worse than as if you were drunk and even high on cannabis. Oh, I'm not even kidding. So using a touchscreen is not only dangerous, but you could be gambling with your life. Let me get into all the details right after this.
A brown car guy. Brown car guy.
So going back to my recent experiences, one of these cars, you cannot even adjust the wing mirror with a button. That is now through the screen. So sometimes, you're driving along and you just suddenly want to adjust your mirror a little bit because you want to see that car that's maybe just at the edge of your blind spot or something, or maybe you want to park and you just want to tip it down or up or whatever to see what's behind you. You can't do that with a quick, touch on the door, the armrest on the door where these things normally are. No, you have to go into the screen, go one menu, two menu, three menu, and then you get there. And then you have to figure out if it's going to work or not, because it's not entirely intuitive. And I found that extraordinary, But forget even that. A lot of cars these days now have connectivity, and they have things like Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. So like I said, this is actual research. So people like AIM RoadSmart, they put out some research into the market, and they said that if you use CarPlay, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, your reaction time could slow by as much as 57%. And compare that to when you're drunk, it's 12%, and if you're high, it's 21%. So this is not only double when you're high, but almost, I would say, 3 times as slow as when you're high if you're driving a car. This is not, in any sense whatsoever, don't get me wrong, to say it's okay to drive while drunk or high on any form of intoxication or drug. Absolutely not. But just as a comparison, that's why that's there. Now, just to add to that, they said the drivers took their eyes off the road for up to 16 seconds whilst operating these systems. If you think about it, at 70 miles per hour, you've just driven 500 meters blind. So if you did this on the motorway at 70 miles per hour, you took your eyes off the road for 16 seconds, you have driven 500 meters. That's about 5 football pitches. You've just driven blind without looking through 5 football pitches. How extraordinary is that? That is crazy. Your infotainment could certainly, Ferrari there. There you go. I bet that hasn't got, well, actually modern ones have, and this is actually a thing that it's quite topical that I drove by, because Ferrari have recently issued a statement saying that they are going to be reducing the reliance on haptic feel buttons and touchscreen buttons in cars and go revert back to actually normal buttons. And I think they even got a retrofit package available. Anyway, so going back to this data, there was another research from Sweden about 3 years ago, and they sent somebody out in a regular Volvo, a 2005 regular Volvo, and they asked them to complete a bunch of tasks whilst they were driving. It took the driver 10 seconds and about 306 meters to complete those tasks. They then put the driver into a car, a more modern car with touchscreens in it. Same set of tasks to complete. Remember, it was 10 seconds and 306 meters in the regular car with the normal normal buttons and stuff. In the car with the touchscreen, it took 45 seconds, and the guy had traveled 1.3 kilometers in that time. We're talking about 4 times longer, 4 times further, and 4 times more dangerous. That is extraordinary. Hope you're enjoying this video. Make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe if you're not already doing so. And support independent automotive journalism channels like mine. You can do that at patreon.com, coffee.com, or taking out a subscription right here on YouTube. Or you know what, better still, you can go and buy my books. I've got 3 books out now. They're all on Amazon. They're all available to buy. More details on this are in the description, but buying any of these books will certainly help. Thanks so much for watching. Other research indicated that it's not even just taking your eyes off the road, but you're kind of losing control of the car, because lane deviation can be as much as half a meter when you're using CarPlay or Android Auto. And stopping distances can increase by between 4 and 5 times. So related to your reaction time, related to actual stopping time, could increase by 4 to 5 times. You know, and if you think about that on a motorway, you know, that could be the situation between surviving an accident and just being paced. I mean, it doesn't even bear thinking about, honestly. But that's the reality of how dangerous, you know, this could be if your attention is diverted too long from the road ahead. I'm showing you some nice cars here, so now we'll see an S2000 just about to go past there. There you go. I love S2000s, I really do. I've driven many of them and I've always enjoyed them. Anyway, and certainly no touchscreens in there. In fact, the S2000, again, quite topical, because the Honda S2000 and Hondas of the past, particularly the S2000, it was designed almost like a motorcycle scenario where everything is geared and tailored towards the driver. The passenger is just completely ignored in that car. And of the buttons, the other buttons that you need are actually within fingertip reach of the steering wheel, so you don't have to take your hands off the steering wheel. You can reach across to the instrument pod, and the buttons are on each side of that. So that's like clever thinking. That's like, okay. And this is the thing about buttons. Don't forget, buttons, muscle memory. You remember where they are. You remember what you need to do with them. You turn the volume. You know how much you need to turn it. Instead of going into a touch screen. And then sometimes with a touch screen, I find it difficult to orientate myself on a large touch screen. Often I have to hold an edge of the touch screen and then use my thumb. Of course, with a button, you know exactly where the button is. Muscle memory will, again, in a while tell you exactly where it is, where you don't even need to look to reach it. You don't even need to look to know how much you're turning it or pressing it or whatever. You just know because it's there, and it will always do the thing that you want it to do. You don't need to find it. So what's happening? Why are we seeing you know, more and more touchscreens? You think that actually surely it's more expensive to do that. Why are manufacturers doing that? No, actually, buttons are actually expensive. I don't know, one time we were in a Lexus LS430 or something, I remember years ago with a colleague in Dubai, and we were bored or something, I can't remember. We started counting the buttons on the dashboard. I think we stopped counting to when we got to about 70 or 80 buttons, different buttons that did various different things, you know. So there was a profusion of buttons, and all of those would cost. The engineering of them, the texture of them, how they do, and don't forget, like, you know, the quality dashboards, because some dashboards, even in things like Maseratis, they end up with that brittle stickiness after a few years. That's horrible. So you have to spend the money and do it properly, which of course Toyota and Lexus certainly would do. But yeah, anyway, so buttons are expensive. Screens nowadays are cheap. You stick a big screen on there and put all the functions into there. Actually relatively cheap. Companies like Tesla, of course, tried to make them trendy. Tesla with minimalist stuff inside, but the reality is that they're not safer. They're dangerous. This is form over function, or worse, should we say, form over funeral, God forbid. Up to 25% of crashes in Europe involve distraction. So this is distraction when you're trying to do something on a screen. The reality is that we think we can multitask, but brains can't process menus, maps, and traffic all at once. That's a lot of, you know, information to be taking in, processing, and then executing. So, you know, when you have to look at a menu on system on your screen and remember, well, where was the button for the glove box? Where was the button for the climate control? How do I turn the volume down? You know, fortunately, the cars I tested recently, they did actually have a volume knob on them, so that's a good thing. Buttons let you drive, screens make you scroll. Think of it that way. So anyway, there is a change going on. Volkswagen, Porsche, Hyundai are actually saying that yes, the screens have become too much and they are too dangerous. Like I said, Ferrari is already dialing back on it. Euro NCAP, which of course dictates a lot of these things in cars because everybody's after that invaluable 5-star crash safety rating that you get from Euro NCAP. And Euro NCAP have actually said that they are going to start to downgrade the ratings for those manufacturers where the interior relies entirely on the touchscreen. So that inevitably, I think, is going to force a lot of manufacturers to go back down the route of inserting buttons. And and the thing is, the reality is that actually I think that is the happy medium. I think the reality should be that, okay, yes, you should have the screen because it's nice to have a touch screen with menus and things that you can do if you want to fine tune the stereo, and there's lots of different functions like, go in there and change the equalizer or whatever. That's all stuff that you do when you're stationary. And that's great, why not, But they need to put buttons in, controllers in, stuff like that you can use when you don't want to use the screen, when you're just driving along. I think that needs to happen because otherwise, you're going to go 5 football pitches without looking and then swerve into a lorry without even knowing about it. So there you go. Those are my thoughts about touchscreens and why I think that I'm not saying that we should get rid of them. I'm not saying that. We should keep them. I think they're great. And I think that, continue to have all these elements and everything in them. But bring the buttons back. Bring all the buttons back. Because we need to have those as well in cars. Give drivers a choice. Let's do that. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your experiences are. Let me know if you've had a mishap or you feel you would nearly have had a mishap because you were trying to figure out how to use a screen in a car. Would love to hear your comments. Don't forget to hit like, share and subscribe on the way out, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Shout out time, guys. Thank you so much. Hey, if you enjoy my content, why not get involved? Buy me a coffee. You can do that at either of these links, or if you're watching on YouTube, buy me a thanks or take out a membership. It all helps. It really does.